All right, I want to just kind of bring up a couple of things about our chapter today in the Qal Participle, chapter 22, the Biblical Basic Hebrew, Basic and Biblical Hebrew by Van Pelt and Pradigal, excuse me, Greg Pradigal. Um, as we look in the Qal Participle today, a little bit of insight. The Hebrew participle is focused on presenting an action or state as ongoing. In English, we put the ing afterward, walking, running, eating, whatever. Something that depicts ongoing, a characteristic or defining what's happening. It's not primarily about when something happens, but about what is happening, the condition that's in progress, or the role being lived out. For example, in Psalm 1:1, blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked. To walk is the word halak. You might remember halak is a three mess cow part, a cow perfect. To put it in the participle form, it would be, hold on, we got to remember, holake. So blessed is the man who does not holake, who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked. The participle holake, walking, doesn't describe sort of the single moment, a single step taking that's done in the past. It describes a pattern, a life. The blessed person is not defined by an occasional failure or success, but by the direction they're currently walking in. So we're not. Well, let me do it this way. Scripture often uses participles to describe both God and God's people. For example, God is the one who what is creating, He's saving, who's judging, who's faithfully keeping His covenant. Where His righteous people, His those that belong to Him, are those walking, trusting, waiting, fearing in the Lord. All those participles, those ing words, are talking about their continued movement, direction. And this matters because faith in the Bible is not merely some past decision we made. It's more than just a present reality. It's a purposeful direction. So we're not living in the past. We're in the moment, moving towards a direction, a specific focus. The participle invites us to ask not what did I do, but who am I becoming? Where am I going? The participle reminds us that God's work is unfinished, but still ongoing, still active. And so we're not frozen by our past. Our past isn't what defines us. A lot of people struggle with their past. We all have a past. Most of it's not good, some worse than others. But we're not defined by our past, and we shouldn't let others define by our past. We should be defined by the path we're on, the direction we're moving, nor do we need to be anxious about the future. Because our future is assured. And if we stay on that directional path, that purposeful direction, that movement, we're called to faithfulness now in the ongoing, continuing journey, continuing walk. So if we're still walking toward the Lord, even whatever pace that might be, maybe some of us are moving slower than others, some are moving faster. Maybe some of us need to pick up the pace. I don't know. But if we're continuing in that journey and we're living within the covenantal promise of God, moving closer towards our destination, it's to be with God. And so the participle helps to bring this out. It's to see faith is not proven by a single moment, but the direction of a life that we is still in motion, it's still moving. And that's the strength of the participle. The participle has much flexibility. And so today we want to dive into chapter 22 and look at how the Hebrew participle works both in the active and the passive voice. So let's do that as we begin to look in chapter 2. Let me share the PowerPoint here. Hold on one sec.
Brother, is it like the ETH ending in the King James Version?
I don't know what ETH ending is.
Like walketh in the
Walk it.
King James?
Yeah, no, I'm not a King James expert, but that sounds right. Yeah.
Okay.
The one who walketh in the path, that would
Mhm.
be a continuing movement. Yes. So that sounds correct to me, but like I said, that's not my strength. Uh,
In Spanish, the participle is the ando and yendo endings.
the which endings? The ando and inyo?
Yendo.
Inyo with the
I-N-D-O.
okay, okay.
E-I-E-N-D-O.
Okay, I'm not that far in my Spanish. I'm still very, very basic, like hello and good night. Buenos dias. No, good night would be buenas noches. I'm not there. But thanks. I need to learn more and more of that. Let's see. How do I? I'm looking for something here. Hold on a sec. I want to pull up a different view. Hold on a sec. There we go. That's what I want. Okay. Okay. I think this is what I want. All right. So let me change this screen here. Uh, there. Okay. All right. So we're going to kind of follow along the chapter. So we're going to basically go as we typically do around the book. We're going to talk about the Qal participle. I want to focus on the form, like we always do. What does it look like? Okay, how do we recognize it? And you'll find it's really quite easy. I hope as you see as we're moving more and more that at least parts of it is becoming easier to grasp, easier to recognize, and easier to understand. Although it may still take more effort to practice and to put it in our memory. But you find that it should be becoming much easier now to say, okay, that makes sense. Oh, okay, I see that, because you already have a foundation that we keep building on. So we're going to talk about the form, what it looks like, and the function. And the function you already know. We've already done this function. It functions exactly like an adjective does. It can be attributively, it can be predicately, and it can be substantively. So that's what we're going to look at. So we're going to look at the active form of the Qal participle, both strong and weak. And the great news about the weak is it's so consistent as compared to other, like the infinite absolute and the infinite construct. Even in the weak verbs, the form was pretty consistent. We always have trouble with the third hey verbs and the biconsonantal verbs, and we'll see the same kind of problems here. But generally speaking, even in the weak verbs, it's not difficult. We're also going to look at the passive form. Now, Qal is a stem, it's an active voice, but in a participle, it functions adjectively. It can function like an adjective and be attributively, predicatively, or substantively. That means it can function like a verb or an adjective. And so it has to be able to work in that environment. So that includes passive voice, so both strong and weak verbs. So the participle is a verbal adjective, and that's the key. It is both a verb and an adjective combined. And that makes it extremely flexible and has a lot of translation. One of the most difficult things to translate is a participle because there's so many different nuances or different perspectives of how you can what it's trying to get across here. And we're going to look at a little bit of that. So the verb participle has a stem, the Qal stem. We know that it's Qal is a simple kind of action, active voice. But the participle function itself can be active or passive. The conjugation, right? This is our sixth conjugation, the last one we're going to go over, right? We started with the perfect, the imperfect, the imperative, the infinite construct, the infinite absolute, and now the participle. And the participle is it's a conjugation that has a lot of flexibility and can function both in it has to function in both an active and a passive voice. It expresses some type of verbal action, like we said, running, the ing, or studying. So it's always going to have this kind of verbal kind of perspective to it, but it also can function like an adjective. So as an adjective, it will have a gender and it will have a number. What it will not have is a person. So let me add here. So we did the infinitive last week, right? We did the infinitive absolute and the infinitive a week before, the infinitive construct. So the infinitive is a non-finite verb, right? A non-finite means there is no person. And a participle is a non-finite verb. It has no person. Now, infinitive has no gender or number. A participle has gender or number, but both of them have no person. And that's the defining factor that makes it a non-finite verb. And what it means is a non-finite verb, and the infinitive or the participle can never stand as the main verb. It will almost always sort of, if it's functioning verbally, will be descriptive or be functioning as a clause or a modifier of some sort. It will never carry the main action. It can talk about when the main action occurs or even how the main action occurs, but it is not the main action in itself. And so that's the unique thing about a participle. But because of that, it has a great degree of flexibility, especially in our translations. So it can function as a verb or has a verbal component and an adjectival component. It can function verbally and it can function adjectively. And we're going to look at that. So when it's translating the Hebrew participle, we typically start with the ing ending. That's just the simplest form, and more often than not, it works. So we just basically take the word cut, cutting, write, writing, and basically come up with a participle. Does that make sense? Everybody nodding their head? Everybody good? Okay. All right. So now how to recognize it. We're going to talk about the active participle. The recognition of the passive is different. So let's focus on the active. The key to recognizing the active participle is the diagnostic feature is the holum in the first root position. There's root 1, root 2, root 3, right? So the holum is the key, and it's in the first position. Now you've seen the holum before, but you've normally seen it over here in the second position, the stem vowel. You've seen that on the imperative, you've seen that on the imperfect, but for the participle, it's going to be in the first position, and that's the key. That's the key diagnostic. Secondary diagnostic is the sere in the stem vowel for the masculine singular. Now, there's no first person, second person, or third person, so we're talking about masculine singular, and this is the key. Generally, that's the primary, and this is a secondary, and it's secondary because it does change as we basically make it feminine or make it plural. It will change, but the holum does not. So that makes it the primary designation. Let me clean up here. Okay, so the inflected endings for the participle are the same that appear with nouns and adjectives. There is absolutely zero new here except for the diagnostic feature to recognize the participle. Everything else you've had, you're just applying it here. You learned that the feminine forms, if you go back to chapter 4, page 27, you see the feminine endings, right? The typical feminine endings are the hey with the kamates, or the rest of them were the tav with the padak, the tav with the segol, or the tav with the hirik yod, or the tav with the shurik. Those are all the feminine singular endings. Well, that's pretty much what you see here, except it's really going to be this one and this one. And so that's what you have here, the feminine singular endings. It could be either or for the singular. That makes sense? Everybody's going like, yeah, we got it. Move on. Right? We okay? Okay. So the singular ending is going to be with our diagnostic holum. The masculine form, the feminine is going to be the same thing, but we'll see the feminine ending just like we saw in our nouns, just like we saw in our adjectives, except that predominantly we use the tav with the segol or the kamete. That would be the feminine ending for a. Now remember, it needs to know if it's masculine or feminine or singular or plural because it has to agree with the word it's modifying. A participle modifies either a verb or a noun or an adjective. It's going to modify something. Or it could stand alone as substantively, function as the object, or the direct object, or as a subject. But most often, if it's functioning, it's going to modify a verb or modify another adjective, or even an adverb. And so it needs to agree with that so you can tell. So it's got to agree in number and gender. It won't agree in person. And so that's the significance of that. So singular forms, pretty simple. Masculine, you have the holum first root position. You maintain that holum in the first root position. But for the feminine, you have two different feminine endings. And in the plural, you've seen the plural endings before. This is nothing new. The feminine is the holum tav. That's the exact same thing we saw for nouns and for adjectives. It's for the masculine form, it's the hieroc yod mem, the exact same thing we saw for nouns and adjectives. So it's absolutely nothing new. You just need to know that. And if you could see the holum in the first root position, regardless of what else is happening, then you could probably recognize everything else, whether it's a feminine singular, a masculine singular, or a masculine plural, feminine plural. Those we've already had. So they're going to appear with the same nouns and adjective endings that we saw before. They're two feminine singular endings. And the diagnostic feature is always the first root letter in every form is the holum vav. Now it can be with the holum vav or it can be with the holum, either way. You'll see both of them. Okay? Any questions? Everybody's a Hebrew participle active voice expert now, right? Got it. Pretty easy. It really is. So I hope you find yourself going like, okay, I got this. That makes sense. You may not retain it all. You may not be able to, may take a minute to kind of, when you see it, to put it together, but you should recognize it. Here's the other great news. In the weak forms, it stays the same. So for all the first guttural, the first noon, and the first yod, right? First guttural, position one, first noon, position one, first yod, position one, position one. It's the same. It still has the strong features to it, the strong diagnostic feature, that is the holum or the holum vav. It does in the masculine singular have the secondary diagnostic feature with the cetera in the stem vowel in the second root position. In the others, for the feminine, it will have it won't be the cetera, but we'll have the feminine forms with the tav segol or the hey kamates for the singular. In the plural, same plural for the feminine forms. It's going to be the holum vav tav, and for the plural masculine form is the final mem with the hieroc yod. The exact same thing. So it's very little variation here. We're talking about first guttural, first noon, and first yod. You just should not be overwhelming in its recognition. The key is still that holum in the first root position. Okay? Makes life very simple, not a lot to memorize, not a lot to put together. Now, and the same thing with the second guttural and the third het and the third ayin. Same thing. We still have, here's our singular masculine, right? There's our primary, there's our secondary. The plural form right there, and there's our primary. Nothing's changed. In the feminine, there we have the tav, segol, and our holum. Nothing's changed. We have in the other feminine form with the kamates hey or the holum in the first root position. The plural, there's the tav, holum vav tav, and we still have the holum in the first root position. Very straightforward, and that of course is with the second guttural. These are all second gutturals, right? Second guttural here, second guttural. And the third hey, or excuse me, third het or third ayin, same thing. Really no impact. There is our holum. There's our holum. There's our holum. There's our feminine form. The only difference is now it's a potic, and that's I can't remember why that changed that way. I don't remember. And there's our kamates hey. There's our holum. There's our holum. The same masculine plural ending. The same feminine plural ending. Very little impact. And so you shouldn't have much trouble recognizing it, okay? Everybody all right so far? Okay, now we're going to go to the one part that does change, but even that is just unbelievably consistent. So third olive, no impact to third olives at all, right? Third olive, here's our third olive right here. Make 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, right? Same holum, same holum, same holum, same holum, same holum. Plural endings, masculine, plural ending, feminine. We have our tav at the end, but we got nothing here, and because it functions as a quiescent, and so basically it gets the cetera over in the second root position. In other words, this olive is going to be quiescent. It's not going to get anything. It's like it's not there. It is physically there, but it's not used. And then we have our other kamete for the feminine. Now, the third hey does have some changes, but it's very minimal. In the masculine form, I want you to recognize this. This is a hey, sagol hey, right? That is not a tav hey. A tav hey is feminine. That is masculine. So normally we see a hey at the ending of a word, and our first dot is feminine. That's my first dot. But if it has the sagol, it's generally going to be a masculine form, and that's what happens here. So the third hey, that third hey actually dropped off, and it's replaced with this sagol hey. It looks like it's still there. I guess in all intents and purposes it is. But basically it's a masculine form, the singular form, that replaces the hey. And the same thing here. Here's the feminine form. That hey dropped off and is replaced with the kamete. And then this should not be new to you either, this yod right here. What happened was that hey, once again, dropped off. The third hey dropped off, and it's replaced by the yod. Anybody remember why it's replaced by the yod? We've had this several times. Why is the yod coming in, taking the place of a hey? We don't remember, do we? Okay. Third hey used to be third yod. Third yod kind of evolved away, but occasionally it comes back when the third hey drops off. That's all that's happening. So we'll often see, let me clean this up a little bit. We'll often see this yod come back because remember the hey was there. That hey got lost. It fell off. It's replaced by the yod, and then you get your feminine ending. That's the feminine ending. That's not your third hey. That hey, kamete hey. That's the feminine ending. That kamete hey. That's not the third hey. It took the place of the third hey. Here, what took the place of the third hey was the yod, Hirik yod in this case. And so we'll see the hey drop off, and it almost looks like it's still there because you got these hey, 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 hey. It's almost like it's still there, but effectively it's gone and replaced with the feminine form or the masculine sagol hey. We also, our plural stays the same, and our plural stays the same, the hey just drops off and is replaced with the plural form. Does that make sense, you guys? Okay. Not overly complex. The key to remember is that, okay, third hey is, listen, third hey is probably the weakest form, probably because it's the most. What occurs most often will often have the greatest variability, the greatest variation to it, because it appears most often. Anything that appears often is going to get changed over time. If it appears seldom, it probably will have much less opportunity to be changed, but something that appears very frequently has more opportunity to get changed over time, and that's what happens to third hey. And so third hey used to be a third yod. Yod fell out of grace. I don't know. God didn't like it. Who knows? I don't know. Someone didn't like it. So the third yod kind of got replaced with third hey. And when third hey is so popular that sometimes it drops off, and sometimes the third yod comes back to say, hey, remember me? I used to be here. This is my home. And so it gives us a reminder. Does that make sense? We okay, guys? Any questions? Patrick's good. I do. You good? Good. David? Benjamin? Cool. All right. Now, biconsonantal is definitely the most difficult and is not directly recognizable because there is no holum. That holum isn't there, it's gone. What is there and what you really have to be able to do is try to recognize that it's a biconsonantal. That's number one. Number two, it has the comates as your diagnostic feature. The key is first to recognize that it is a biconsonantal, right? Only two positions, 1, 2, 1, 2. This is the plural ending, not part of the root. This is the plural ending, not part of the root. 1, 2. This is the feminine ending, not part of the root. If you can recognize that it's a biconsonantal, then it becomes a lot easier to say, oh, that has a COM-H. A biconsonantal doesn't take the holum, so that's why there's a COM-H there. Then it becomes a little easier, but you have to be able to recognize that it's a biconsonantal. And so basically, it's like a little puzzle. You start with the outside and you work your way in. I always say this, you always start with the outside and work your way in. On this end, you work your way in and you say, oh, what is that ending? Oh, that's a feminine ending. What is that ending? That's a feminine plural. What is that ending? It's a masculine plural. I could take those off. I could take all that off and I still have my root word right there. And that's what you're trying to get to. And if you could see that root word, you say, well, that's a biconsonantal word. In other words, it only has two root letters. That's why it doesn't have the holum. And so it has the COM-H instead. That's your key. But you got to be able to recognize. And if you don't recognize it, well, you'll figure it out eventually. The more you see it, the more comfortable you get. And in some words, really vocabulary, you kind of recognize, you see it quite often. So that help? Make sense? All right. That's the form. Pretty straightforward for the most part, right? Your typical diagnostic feature is the holum in the first root position. A secondary diagnostic feature for the singular masculine form is that set A in the stem vowel, the second root position. You're going to use for the feminine singular, the typical feminine singular endings that you see for a noun that you had in chapter 4, or what you see in adjectives. What this will do is help strengthen what you've learned for nouns and for adjectives, because now you're using it again. Help strengthen it. So it's nothing new. You have the tav sagol for the one singular form, feminine form, and the COM-H hey for the other singular feminine form. And then, of course, you have the exact same plural forms that you've had before, hirkyod, mem, and the hova tav for the plural feminine. Any questions so far? Okay. Now, parsing it is pretty straightforward. Basically, you have your participle, right? There's our holum. That's my key. Here's our holum vav. So same thing. Looks different, but it is a holum in the first position. It's just a long vowel, unchangeable long vowel. It's still the holum in the first position, and that's what gives us our key. And so it's a qal active participle. You have to give its gender and number, feminine singular, masculine, feminine plural, masculine plural. Remember, there's no person, no first, second, or third. And then you give its lexical form. And generally, then you give its meaning. I don't know why they never listed its meaning in its context, what it means. Nothing really new. It is a non-finite verb because there's no person. So it's non-finite. Same like the infinite, absolute and the infinite constructs. Now, how do you use it? This is nothing new. All it's going to do is strengthen what you've already learned in adjectives, which is chapter 6, I think, if I remember right. Let's see, is that 6? No, 7, chapter 7, adjectives. So you learned adjectives, and what was key in adjectives is the agreement in gender and number and definiteness. That was kind of helps us to determine how it's being used. Sometimes position, if it comes after versus before, although generally that's not really our major diagnostic feature. But it's agreement in in gender, number, and definiteness, right? So if it is modifying a noun, right? Here's our noun. Ha, ha, the land, or the people, excuse me, people. The people. Here's our article, the, and so this is modifying the people, and it's basically, here's our 1, 2, 3 root position. There's our holum right there, and we have, because it's a masculine singular, we have our secondary diagnostic feature with the sere, and it refers to dwell. To dwell, in this case, participle form, we just say dwelling. So you could say the dwelling people, the people dwelling in the land. This is in, this is our in, and there's the land right there. People dwelling in the land, or you can actually, and oftentimes what we do is we'll make it into a clause, such as a relative clause. The people who dwell in the land. That would be a relative clause. And so either way, it's defining the people, the dwelling people, the people dwelling, or the people who dwell in the land. Lots of different ways you can pull this out. But the key is it's defining, it's giving characteristics in some way about the people. In this case, it's defining the people who dwell in that land versus other people somewhere else, I guess. So, make sense? But it agrees in gender, number, and definiteness. These are both singular, both masculine, excuse me, and both definite, right? Here we have Yahweh, right? Lord, Yahweh, Elohim with our pronominal suffix. That is a second masculine singular pronominal suffix. So that is, anytime you put the pronominal suffix with a noun, it makes it possessive. The pronominal suffix is possessive, right? So second masculine singular is you. If you make that possessive, it's your. So this is your God right there, right? So Yahweh, your God, is a consuming, here's fire, that's our noun, and here is our holum, and we have a kamates, hey, so that's a feminine singular, right? That's the singular form, and that's a terrible singular form, as this fire is singular and feminine, and so it's modifying that, and it is your Yahweh, your God, is a consuming fire. Okay, you've done this before. We're now recognizing the vocabulary, recognizing the pieces. Takes time and effort. Let me clean this up. That takes time and effort, but you see how it functions as an attributive use. It's attributing something to the noun it's modifying. The dwelling people, the consuming fire. You see that in this case, this is indefinite. There's no definite article, so this is indefinite. As this is indefinite. They agree. They agree in definiteness. They're both indefinite. They agree in gender. They're both feminine. There's our feminine singular. And they agree in number. They're both singular. If you look up fire, I didn't look it up. I'm assuming it must be, if I go look up fire real quick, it must be feminine. If I knew my vocabulary, I wouldn't have to look it up. But I really don't know. I'm not strong in vocabulary. So Aleph Shin, let's see, would be towards the end of the Aleph. Okay, Aleph Shin is common singular. So common singular, and I don't know, I have to look at that. It's a common, not singular. I have to look at why that agrees, but I don't know. Anyway, I'll have to double check that. Gender, number, and definiteness agreement. I'm assuming that really is agreement, or we wouldn't have it in here. And that's why we got a consuming fire. Any questions? Attributive use, modifying typically another noun or another adjective. We'll agree in gender, number, and definiteness. Either both have the article or both not have the article. Remember that definite for nouns can be with the article, can be with a pronoun, or can be a proper name. Samuel, Yahweh, Israel. Those are all proper names, and so proper names makes it definite, even if you don't have the definite article. If you have a pronoun, he, then that makes it definite, even if you don't have the definite article. So remember those three rules. It's in chapter 7. Okay, and then predicate use. Predicate, remember, predicate, if we go in English, you have subject, predicate, and object. Basically, everything after the subject, the verb and its object, is the predicate. And so predicate use is going to be basically I take the subject, here's my subject, and I'm going to make everything the predicate after that. Clean this up, it gets too messy. So let's break this down. Here we have, now it's going to, in this case, for the attributive use, the noun modifies it and it follows the noun. So it's after, it follows the noun it's modifying, okay? But in the predicate, it can follow or precede. It may precede or follow it. So it can come before or after. And in this case, it happens to be after. Let's break this down. This is what? Anybody remember? What is that?
Conjunction.
Conjunction. And it means?
And.
Yeah, typically and, but, even, also, right? Those kind of things. That's our most go-to right there. Rightfully so. Now, what is this?
That's the definite article.
Yes, it is. That's the, which makes that our word har. Anybody remember what har is? You don't really have to remember. You can read it in the answer there.
Mountain.
Mountain.
Yeah, the mountain, right? So here we have and the mountain. Pretty straightforward. Okay, and the mountain. So that is our noun, and then we have this word here, burning. There's our holum first root position with a secondary diagnostic feature for a masculine singular Saturday there, and so there's our participle, and that's why it's burning. And then we have there's our preposition for in or with, and this would be
With.
yeah, in or with, and then there's fire, right? So, and the mountain was burning, meaning it was continuing with fire. Now, the was actually comes from the context, and we don't have the context here, but I think it comes from Exodus. I don't remember if it's chapter 9 or 19. I think it's chapter 9. I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember the context or the passage, but the context is what gives us our verb. So it's a verbless clause, and the participle is functioning to make the connection with the verb. And so it is functioning to define the predicate. So, and the mountain burning with fire, and the context is going to tell us it was. And the reason the context does is because this is a narrative. It's like a story. I'm telling a story. Well, if I'm telling a story, I'm going to tell something that occurred in the past, generally. Okay, I might tell something about the future, but that would probably be more discourse. But in a narrative, I'm telling you about what happened. And so we typically put the narrative in the past function. So that's why it was burning. So that's what's happening here. You notice now the more and more we go, the more and more we talk more about more syntax, more usage than we do just basic translation. So same thing here. What's this function right here?
Same conjunction.
Yeah, okay. A nice little trick, and we all failed. This is the name Samuel.
Yeah. Samuel.
Shu Shmuel. So that's, yeah, and I should have done that. Anyway, that's Samuel's name, right? And he was lying down. The was, again, comes from the context in the narrative form. Here's our 1, 2, 3 positions. There is our holum. There is, because it's a singular masculine, it's another diagnostic feature for us. Can't count on this feature because if it's feminine, that won't be there, or if it's plural, that won't be there. So lying down, there's our ing usage. And we got in, and here's our temple right here. In the temple, yeah. The temple, it's right there. Yeah. That makes sense?
Yep.
Okay. So it's a predicately, in other words, it's attributing something about the subject. Here's our subject, Samuel. Samuel was what? He was lying down right here. Where? In the temple. That's all it is.
So shakab is like laying down or rest.
Shakav would be to, yeah, we can look it up. I don't remember exactly, guys.
Okay.
Go back to our little index in the back of the book. I go there a lot, so y'all should too. So with it helps you to get comfortable with the alphabet in its order because you got to find the order. Shakav, so that would be with the will come earlier.
Shin, then
Page
Kav.
page 481,
481.
top left.
Hold on, with the bait ending, shaka. Oh yeah, there it is. You have to lie down, to have sexual intercourse with. So oftentimes this refers to some intimate relationship. But I don't know that it does in that particular context. But it was lying down in the temple. I doubt it was referring to him having an sexual intercourse type thing. But so it could be to lie down or to have sexual relationships. Okay. Any thoughts or questions? Right? You did this with adjectives. It is a attributive use, predicate use, and now substantival use. Exact same thing. There's nothing new here. So the participle can be used independently as a noun, but as a noun, it can be functioning as the subject or the object, either one. And so typically we might put it in more of a the one who that performs that action. In Hebrew, a participle is used substantively. It behaves just like a noun. Anything you can do to a noun, you could do to a participle. What can you do to a noun? Well, you could put the definite article with it. You can put the preposition with it. You can put the pronominal suffix with it. Anything you could do to a noun, you could do to a participle when it's functioning substantively, right? And so we get and, this is not, no, and I'm trying to remember this. Here's Israel. I always get the ones I know first, and that makes life easier for me. This is to sleep. And so one who keeps, here's to keep, 1, 2, 3, to keep or keeping. But here's our diagnostic feature. Again, we're dealing with a third masculine singular. There's a secondary diagnostic feature, the one who keeps. So there's no verb in this clause. That's why, no, excuse me, I apologize. This is functioning as the subject of the verb. The one who keeps, there's the verb, and not. And the one who keeps Israel will not sleep. Make sense? All right, we're going to switch gears and talk about passive. It's the exact same thing. It's just a different form. And now you're going to translate it with a passive voice. Instead of doing the action, it receives the action. And that's the only difference in terms of translation. But in terms of its recognition, it's going to be with a holum asuric in the stem vowel position. Notice in every single case, we have the shuric, the shuric, the shuric, the shuric in the second position, 1, 2, and 3. 2 is our stem vowel. Call it stem vowel because it typically defines the stem So as we look at all the other stems, we'll see the stem is really the vowel associated with that second root position really helps define diagnostic feature for the stem. For example, Qal. Let's see, Qal, Qamate. There is the stem vowel. So this is the typical vowel pattern for the Qal. And that would be the stem vowel, 1, 2, and 3 position. Okay. So for the passive participle, it's very much the same, but the diagnostic feature now is the shurik in the second root position. Everything else is the same. Now we don't have the holum here. Instead, you have a Qamates, and that Qamates is there in the 3ms, excuse me, not 3, the masculine singular. And the rest of the time, it's going to be the Shava because you've extended the length of the word. So the inflectional endings for the passive participle are the same as that appeared with nouns and adjectives. Same inflectional endings, nothing different. There's only one feminine form this time, whereas in the active voice, we had 2 feminine forms. We had one that had the tav with the sagol, but here it's only going to be the kamete. So it makes it a little bit simpler. Diagnostic feature for the Qal passive participle is the shurik stem vowel in every form. It could be written though as a kibitz, excuse me. I think of cat food when I think of kibitz. There's a cat food that sounds like kibitz. So it could be written with the kibitz. So either way. Any questions?
Good.
All right. All right. So weak verbs function look just like the strong. We have in our first guttural position, we have in our third olive position, in our second guttural position, there's another second guttural position. There's a first olive position, first guttural position. Here's a third hek position, third ion position, also with a first yod. Here's a third ion position, also with a first noon. Here's a first olive position, and here's a first olive with a second guttural. In all cases, we still have the shurik as the second stem vowel in every single case. It doesn't matter. It's, that's the key. So if it has the holum up here, it's going to be an active participle. If it has a shurik as a second stem vowel position, it's a passive participle. It's pretty straightforward. Okay? So even in weak verbs, where we see a lot of variation, when we get to the non-finite verbs, the infinite construct, the infinite absolute, and especially the participle, even the weak verbs function or form maintains the strong verb pattern form. It makes life simpler. And what we can expect, third hey, what occurs most often will have the most variation to it. And so what we see is the third hey dropped off, and what do we have in its position is a yod. A yod. A yod. A yod. Why? Because third hey was once third yod. And the yod comes back and says, hey, don't forget about me. I'm still here. But the hey dropped. In our singular form, it's replaced with the yod. Our feminine singular, our masculine singular, our feminine singular is replaced with the yod, and we keep our kamete. Our plural masculine is we replace the hey with the yod, and we keep our yod, hirik yod, final mem. And in the plural feminine, the olam vav tav is the ending for the plural form, but we keep the yod replaces the hey. And that's real. So if you can remember that yod, so if you go 1, 2, okay, that's not a position, that's a vowel. So that's 3. Oh, I'm ending in a yod. That's weird. Why am I ending in a yod? Oh, wait a minute. Third hey used to be third yod. Or excuse me, yeah, third hey used to be third yod. Third hey used to be originally third yod. So hence, oh, that's a hey. And the hey dropped out and the yod replaced it. Okay, so it's like a little puzzle. But you start seeing the same puzzle over and over, it becomes more and more recognizable and more I guess, just easier. How do we parse it? The same way we did before, except you got to make sure you say it's a passive participle, right? You have your participle form. There's our shurik. There's our shurik. This is a feminine. This is a singular masculine. This is a feminine singular. And so it's a Qal passive participle masculine singular, right? There's no ending. And this is a Qal passive participle feminine singular. That's our kametz hey at the end. You get put in the lexical form, and you also need to put in the definition or the translation of the context, the contextual usage, right? All right, any questions? All right, now you get to the usage. It's exactly the same. There is no difference, okay? Attributive use is going to be exactly the same. It modifies the noun. It will come after the noun, generally follows that noun, will follow it, and it will agree in gender and number and definiteness, right? Definiteness, definite agreement, right? These are both feminine, singular. This is the feminine singular ending here. There's our hey that dropped out. It must be a third hey word. It looks like it anyway. And the tav would be the ending, feminine ending for it. So that's all there is. I don't remember all the words. You know, here's our book. This is in. This is book. This would be the. There's Torah. So that's feminine. Here is the, and this is this. This, and so the covenant written in this book, right? In this book right here. And here's the covenant right here. Barit, to cut the covenant. And here is written, and there's 1, 2, 3, katav, to cut, or to write, excuse me. And so it is written in this book. So written or written defined would make it passive, wouldn't it? It is the covenant written. The covenant didn't do the writing, the covenant received the writing. So that makes it passive. Make sense? Guys okay? Patrick, Baidu? All right, David? Ben? Everybody good? All right. Okay, and then we get to the predicate use, exact same thing, nothing new here. The participle assert, it's going to assert something about the noun. It's not going to modify it. It will precede or follow. I mean, it's not going to modify it in the sense that it's qualifying it, but it will agree in gender and number, but not in definiteness. So it can come before or after, whereas the attributive normally comes after, and the attributive will agree in all three characteristics, gender, number, and definiteness. But the predicate will agree on only 2 of the 3, and that is gender and number, not indefiniteness. Okay, so here we have Yahweh. Is that definite or indefinite?
Definite.
Definite because it's a proper name. So it's definite. Even though we don't see the article, a proper name, Samuel, Israel, Yahweh, David, those are all definite. And so that's a definite. And here we have blessed. 1, 2, 3 position. There's our shurik. We have the kametz. So sort of a secondary diagnostic feature. This is the primary diagnostic feature. And so that is Baruch, that is blessed. And notice is Yahweh forever. Here is to the preposition. And here's Olam. Olam is ever. So to ever or forever. So that is forever. So blessed is Yahweh forever. Okay? Everybody good, right? All right. And then substantive use. Remember, substantive can be like an adjective, can function substantively. It can function as the subject. Just because it's a substantive doesn't mean it's a subject. It could also function as the object of the verb. I think I don't know about most often. I'm going to assume most often it's more subject, but substantive means it can be the subject or the object. It's standing in place of a subject or object that's not there. And so it's functioning in that manner. So here we have according to the preposition, and here we have the writing, right? The 1, 2, 3 with our shurik. And so according to what is written, and it's passive because it didn't do the writing, it's what was written. There's in Torah, the law, and here's Moses' name, Moshe. And so, according to what was written, passive, in the law. Um, you notice that if you put it in a passive tense, most often it's not ing, but more of a ed or en because it's more what's happened to it. I think I'm not an expert in that area, but I think that's the case. Does that make sense, you guys? I mean, hopefully this is like a walk down memory lane with adjectives, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I kind of remember that now. And basically, you're strengthening your adjectives by looking at the participle. Um, and so that's the active and the passive, and that is pretty much it. Yeah, it's not really. It might feel like a lot. Um, I don't even know if it feels like a lot, to be honest, because it just really has very little variation to it. On the active, we're looking for the holum in first root position. On the passive, we're looking for the shirk in the second root position. We might see some other diagnostic features, like for the masculine singular. On the active, we might see the sere. On the passive, in sere in the second root position, the stem vowel. In the passive, we might see the kamates in the masculine singular in the first root position. And in the other positions, we'll probably see the sagol or the shava, excuse me. If it's guttural, it'll be a hatav shava. And we'll see the same endings, same inflectional forms. The ending being inflection, how it inflects in inflectional forms. For masculine versus singular, masculine has no ending. So masculine versus feminine, masculine has no ending. Feminine has the typically the kamates hey. But in the active, it might also have the sere tav. It's two different forms of the feminine singular, and which we saw actually in chapter 4 with nouns. And then in the passive form, or excuse me, in the plural form, whether you're passive or active, we're seeing for the masculine plural the hirik yod final mem, and for the feminine plural the holum vav tav, which is very consistent for feminine plural. And same with the masculine plural form of the hirik yod. That's it, guys. I mean, I feel like it's pretty simple, but I don't want to assume that it's simple to you. Any thoughts or questions or concerns?
Seems good.
Okay. Okay, I am behind on grading the quizzes, and I'm really behind. I'll get caught up soon. It's the end of the year, 2025, and I am just overloaded trying to get end of the year stuff done, taxes to people and tax forms to people, and also all our donors. I send out information to the donors about the end of the year and that kind of stuff because I need to keep the donors wanting to support. They need to see the good work that you guys are doing, that the instructors are doing. And when they see that, they're like, okay, I feel like there's value for the donation. And so hopefully they keep doing that. And also to reach out to other potential new donors so they would continue that. You may have seen, I hope you did see, if you haven't, we signed what's called an articulation agreement with Faulkner University. I submitted one to Amherst University. We haven't got feedback on that yet, but submitted to Faulkner University, and we've signed an articulation agreement. That means that they will accept our credits. Now, in most times, and you're talking about most other schools of preaching, they accept the credits towards their bachelor's. Like they might you earn 166 semester hours when you finish with GST. And most schools will, when you do that articulation agreement, they would accept maybe 35, 48, maybe 50 hours towards a bachelor's degree. And it's like, okay, that gives you a deep start in a bachelor's. But what Faulkner did is just fascinating. They accepted our work, our credits, our instruction, our processes. to take the place of the bachelor. So whoever finishes at Georgia School of Theology with a biblical theology program or the biblical doctrine program can go straight into Faulkner's master's program, even if they don't have a bachelor's degree. That's just fantastic, and it's a big plus for our instructors.
That's great.
I'm sorry?
That's very great.
It is very good. Thank you, Patrick.
It
It says a lot about our instructors. It says a lot about the instruction, the process, and we're very, very happy with that. And so, we'll use that for recruiting, and we'll use it for fundraising. So,
Do they have some type of scholarships at Faulkner or not?
yeah, typically, if you're a member of the church, you get 60% off of the
60?
60. That's right.
Wow, that's nice.
I know that because we just spent time with them.
Because-
We have 2 students that already graduated. Both want to go there. Maybe a third person too. I don't know yet. But 2 students that both want to go there, and ultimately they'll get 60% off the tuition. So the tuition runs about,
It's expensive.
well, that's the same with all the universities, and actually Faulkner's one of the least expensive ones. I think tuition runs about roughly $1,000 per class. That doesn't count the fees. That's just tuition. And
Well,
so
my
that's about,
son went to Faulkner, and
yeah, it costs a lot. My son went to Faulkner too.
it's a lot of money.
It is, yeah.
The
And
only
so it runs about $400 per class with the discount. So
we spend a lot more than that.
yeah, I know. So it's a really good deal. So
I was looking into it because I was looking into my PhD, but I have a master's and a degree in mathematics and a
yeah,
bachelor's.
I knew that.
But I
Yeah,
wanted to include, Bible and mathematics together. That's what I was looking into, like maybe gematria or something like that. But I
yeah.
don't know what they have there.
Well, I don't want to get too big of a discussion about gematria now, but that's a whole different abused area.
Yeah.
But anyway, the key is going to be for most schools is how much Bible do you have, and will they accept? They'll accept your master's. That's not the question, but they may require leveling courses in Bible if you don't have a lot of Bible,
Yeah.
even though you're a preacher. So that's really going to
Yeah.
be what you got to find out.
Yeah.
I got my PhD at Amherst, but Faulkner offers a PhD. Freed Hardman offers a master, a divinity of a doctor, excuse me, a
Doctor of Divinity.
ministry. They
Yeah.
don't offer a PhD. The difference is a PhD is more research based. If you go for a
Yeah.
PhD, you've got to get in the languages. You have to have the Hebrew
Yeah.
and the Greek. At Faulkner, you have to have the Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic. At Amherst, just the Hebrew and the Greek. And Faulkner is really strong in the languages.
Good.
Anyway,
Yeah.
it just depends,
That's why I'm going Hebrew. Then I'm gonna do Greek.
There you go. All right.
What I'm doing.
All right, guys. Any
Okay.
questions? I will try to get caught up soon. Probably not this week. I'm still loaded on grading everything, but don't get behind. It's better for me to be behind than you. Okay. Don't get behind on your paper, on your quizzes and stuff like that. Stay up with that. And I saw them submitted. I think 2 of you submitted. One of you submitted quiz 19, which it's all grade, but you all get 100 for it. 2 of you submitted, 2 out of the 4 submitted grade for quiz 20, and 2 submitted quiz 21. Not the same 2 in both cases,
Yeah.
but we make sure you get caught up before we get too far behind, because it'd be difficult to get caught up, and you also cost your points. All right,
Okay.
all right,
Well-
David, close us in a prayer.
Let's pray. Our merciful Father, hallowed be thy name. Father, we thank you for this time that we could enjoy the blessings of the languages that you created. Thank you, Father, because that give us an extra view or a wider view of your holy word. Thank you, Father, for the school, for all the efforts that they are doing to keep training faithful men to continue preaching your word. Father, we thank you for Brother Dave as well for his effort to teach us. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray for all this. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, brothers. Y'all have a good week. We'll see you soon.
Amen.
Thank you, you too. We'll see you.
All right. Thank you.
Marcos, ¿cómo está?
Say bye, Marcos.
Bye-bye,
Say
Marcos.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.